Hello, welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, this week, the format's going to be a little bit different because I just want to talk about one story in depth. And then when we get to the current events part, there's a lot that happened this week that I want to touch on. So the format will be a little bit different. But before we get started, just a couple of words. This program and all the other programs that we do are produced and sponsored by the Prayer Box Ministry. And you can find us online at prayerboxministry.org. That's org.org. And we are going to, we're in the middle of changing how we do things. If you've been watching this program, you know that we've been trying to funnel everything we do through the social medias that we have. And I just feel like the social media is starting to censor, and I don't want to contribute to that. I don't want to be a part of that, but yet I want to get information out. I want to get God's word out, and I want to let people see what's going on. But on the other hand, I don't want the social sites to benefit from it. So what we're going to do is we're only going to put the audio version of most of the shows we do on the social sites, and then we're going to put extras just on our website. And one of the shows we're just going to take off that I do is called The Right Wing Reverend. We're just going to take that off of the social sites, and we're going to put the audio and video just on the website. But the Bible reading and This Week in Politics, the blog, and the other things that we do, we're going to put the audio online, and then we'll put the audio and the video on the website. So that's that. So now, if you've noticed, my shirt is really, really loud this week. But there is a reason for it. As I record this, this is Veterans Day weekend. Veterans Day was yesterday. It is celebrated tomorrow by governments and businesses and stuff. So I wanted to wear my shirt. It's red, white, and blue, and the dark lines are dark blue. But it is a red, white, and blue shirt. It is patriotic, and frankly, I've been saving it for just today. So, and about Veterans Day, I do want to say our family is huge in the military. My dad retired from the military. My son was in the Air National Guard. I have many uncles and cousins who were in the military and fought for our country. And I just want to say thank you. You are a blessing to this country and to our family, and to all of you, thank you. Thanks to all of our American veterans. You guys are awesome. Okay, so this week in politics, the story that I want to cover is the one that the media has just been talking about nonstop. And the Democrats won 2 races this week, one in Virginia and one in New Hampshire. They were both governorships. And you would think, if you listen to the mainline press, you would think that they just, they were David toppling Goliath. They're writing Donald Trump's obituary again. They are saying that the Republicans are done and the Democrats are back again. So I just wanted to take some time and let's take a look at the races. Well, I'm going to concentrate on Virginia. I mean, I think everybody in the whole world understands that New Hampshire is Democrat, going to be Democrat, going to stay Democrat. So it's no surprise that a Democrat won there. But let's take a look at Virginia. Now, Virginia used to be a red state. Without question, they were red. In fact, when Reagan was in office, that was part of the solid Dixiecrat red. They were considered one of those southern states that Reagan got. So was it a major upheaval that the Democrats won in Virginia? Well, if you take Virginia and you divide it lengthwise across the middle, the line that goes to the north basically is north of that line is basically suburbs of Washington, D.C. So who lives in Washington, D.C.? Swamp rats, liberal, left-wing swamp rats. Also, Virginia has been inundated with legal and illegal immigrants. And they all, for the most part, have moved to the northern part of the state around Washington, D.C. So it's no surprise. It's kind of like the state I live in Illinois. If you look at the state of Illinois, there is two counties in Illinois that are solid Democrat: Cook County and East St. Louis County. Those are strictly Democrat, will be Democrat, will never change from Democrat, will always be Democrat. The rest of the state, for the most part, is some form of Republican, which means it goes from blue to purple to red the further south and west you go from Cook County, until you get all the way, then it turns red and stays red all the way till you get to East St. Louis County. Now, the reason I say that is because the same thing happens in Virginia, only to a larger degree. Instead of it being one county, there are quite a few counties in that northern part of Virginia that are all left-wing liberal swamp rats. Now, the rest of the state, for the most part, is still conservative Republican. However, the illegal and legal immigration has hit the whole state, hardest in the north, but still hit the rest of the state, so that although they are conservative Republican in the southern part of that state, the numbers are not as big as they used to be because of immigration. Virginia is a good case study in why the Democrats want open borders. Because when illegals come in and they get on the dole, which most of them do, and the Democrats are always about handing out the dole, and the illegals know that, so they come in and they vote for Democrats, almost without exception. So in this election, the Democrats' name was Northam, and the Republicans' name was Gillespie. Now let's take a look at these two. Northam is a establishment Democrat. Now, before the election, everybody was calling Gillespie a Republican. And there was a reason I did not talk about or endorse any part of this election, because Gillespie is a rhino, a Republican in name only. He is an establishment Republican. And if you have been watching me for any amount of time, here is what I believe has been happening in the last 20 years in American politics. The Republican and Democratic Party, as I knew it under Reagan, is dead. It's gone. There is no Republican and Democratic Party anymore. We still have two parties. One party is the establishment party, and the other party is the Tea Party. The Tea Party is the remnant of the old Republican Party. Conservative values, smaller government, lower taxes, stronger military, protect our borders, Christian values. That's the Tea Party. The other party, the establishment Republican and Democratic Party, there's not a dime's worth of difference. Let me tell you about this guy Gillespie that everybody was touting as a Republican. He worked in the George W. Bush campaign. He was the ex-Republican National Committee chairman. So he's clearly an establishment guy. Now, remember, this is not a Senate or a House seat. This is a gubernatorial seat. The guy that is leaving the governorship is Terry McAuliffe, the guy that used to work for the Clintons in the Clinton White House. And he went down here and he just set up a mafia-style government under the establishment. His wife received a lot of money from the Clinton Foundation to run for a Senate seat, I believe. The machine he set up did a fabulous job of getting the vote out in the northern part of the state. He went in and did a lot of machine building for the Democrats. But when it comes to voting, when it comes to their record, I promise you in 4 years, this guy Gillespie, his record you could have taken his name off of it. Northam, you could take his name off of it and put Gillespie or vice versa, and there'd have been not worth a dime's worth of difference. Both of these guys will vote the same. And let me give you an example. Again, using Illinois as an example, we have the exact same problem. We had a Democrat running this state for years, which is why we got into the problem that we're in. We have Democratic House and Democratic governorship. But the last election, Rauner won. He's a Republican. He did some pretty slick things to win that I thought was pretty astute at the time. He is a billionaire, and he was talking like he was a Tea Party Republican, so I voted for him. Well, since he's been in there in the last 2 years, his vote is no different than a Democrat. I mean, he voted for state-funded abortions. He voted for a budget that raised taxes 5% and spending 5%. He signed an education funding bill that gave Chicago more money than they asked for, and screwed the downstate schools. I mean, he votes just like his accomplishments. I mean, you could have taken Rauner's name off and put any Democratic name you want on there. Not a dime's worth of difference, because he's an establishment Republican. And it's the same thing in Virginia. Gillespie is an establishment Republican. Now, here's the interesting thing that the press is trying to write Trump's obituary based on these two elections. Now, in case you haven't picked up on it, let me spell it out. It would have been a miracle if a Republican would have won either one of those states. These are Democratic states with Democratic governors, and the people that vote are Democrats. So what they did is they held on to their seats. They didn't gain any, they didn't lose any. They did exactly what they were expected to do. And even if the Republican had managed to eke out a win, it wouldn't have made a dime's worth of difference. So knowing that it would not have made a difference, and they did only what they were supposed to do, how is it that the press has made the jump from, since the Democrats won 2 elections, which, by the way, they lost the last 5 that were Senate and House seats, they lost 5 in a row. And if you count the primaries, they lost about 8 in a row. So is this a repudiation of the Trump administration? Now, the press is trying to make the case that yes, it is. What they're trying to say is the American people have had it with Trump and they want Democrats back and they're going to vote the Democrats in and the Republican Party is dead and on and on and on. That's absolutely not true. And the exit polling data from Virginia will show that. And here's the number one stat. The group of electorate that got Donald Trump elected by a huge majority was the high school educated white male. Okay. And he got him by a huge percentage. And the vote that he got in Virginia almost mirrored the percentage that he got in the national election. So the Trump voters showed up. The Trump voters voted Republican. And I'm sure they didn't want to. I'm sure they held their nose, but a Republican, in most people's view, is still a Republican. I don't think so. I think if you look at it, establishment versus Tea Party, I wouldn't even voted in that election. So is it logical for the mainstream press to take a gubernatorial election where they were expected to win because they are Democratic states and to trumpet it up like it's a huge David and Goliath thing, and then to make that jump to say that it is a repudiation of the Trump administration? I don't think so. I think the media is living in la la land. I think the Democratic Party is so decimated and destroyed by the Clintons and the Obamas that it'll be decades before they recover. And the longer and the more we dig into the illegalities of both of them, they have destroyed the Democratic Party. I'm sure the Democrats wish that Hillary and Bill Clinton would disappear along with Obama. Why Obama? Because Obama spent the Democratic National Committee into the poorhouse, left it bankrupt, and left it open for Hillary Clinton to come in and to bail it out, i.e., take over and cheat Bernie and use illegal methods. She committed felonies on that. Also, Obama had to sign off on giving away 20% of our uranium to the Russians. Hillary got paid off, and I am 99% sure that at some point in the future, somebody will find a huge stash of cash that Obama has had access to, and it'll be traced back to signing off on this. I've never seen a more corrupt administration. I've never seen a more corrupt individual than Hillary and Bill Clinton. They're the modern day Bonnie and Clyde. They just robbed everybody, all for their personal gain, and she won't go away. Time is coming. I think the swamp is trying to put it off as long as they can, hoping she dies before they have to get down to it. So they're stalling, but it's such a huge national scandal now. They have to do something, and they will. The question is, will she be alive, and will we get to see her in prison? My expectation is no. They will investigate finally when she dies, and they will say that she was guilty, and they will, shake their finger and condemn. But by that point, she's dead, and Bill and Chelsea's got the money, and there you go. I mean, she's 70 or 72. She's in that ballpark. So, and there's something is wrong with her health. So I'm sure that's what they're waiting for. So when I sat down and I thought about it and I analyzed it, I asked myself, what can we learn from these two elections? I believe, now, in full disclosure, I must tell you, I did not vote for Trump. And the reason I did not vote for Trump, I didn't vote for Hillary either. I wrote in uh, Ted Cruz. And the reason was because the state was going to go Democrat anyway, and I didn't want to waste my vote. So I voted my conscience instead of the party. But I believe that we as conservatives, as long as Trump is espousing and pushing conservative values, we need to get on board and work for the Tea Party, not for Trump, because when Trump is gone, this movement, the Tea Party, needs to survive and needs to grow. We have a huge opportunity coming up in the next election, and Steve Bannon is doing the right thing. We should get on board with him. I believe in the next election, there will be at least 4 seats that will go from establishment to Tea Party. Alabama, Tennessee, Arizona, and I'm hoping Alaska. I don't know what Bannon's done up there, but I know that there's a female in Arizona that has already got the nomination for the Republican, and she's likely going to win. That is a Republican state. Bob Corker has gotten out, and as I understand, Steve Bannon's got a conservative lined up there. Judge Roy Moore won down in Alabama. We're going to take a look at that race here in a little bit. And I don't know. I'd like to see in Alaska. I would like to see. Oh, my favorite conservative girl. What is her name? She ran for vice president with McCain. Anyway, Sarah Palin. I'd love to see Sarah Palin run against that liberal establishment Republican senator up there. I think she is up for election this time. So anyway, I think that as long as he's espousing those things, we need to jump on board the Tea Party. Stop looking at it as Republican and Democrat. Start looking at it as establishment and Tea Party, and let's start helping the Tea Party. Now, I have been saying for several years now, trying to get the Tea Party motivated, and I've done many, many programs about getting the Tea Party out and established, and they have not done it. I am very disappointed in the Tea Party. I'm very happy that Steve Bannon is stepping up. I believe that without Steve Bannon stepping up and without Trump calling out the establishment Republicans and jumping on them when they need it, people would still be thinking as Republicans and Democrats, and there would be no change in Washington. Trump is cleaning the swamp. Bob Corker, part of the swamp. The guy that ran against Judge Roy Moore, his name was Strange, swamp rat. The Republican lady up in Alaska, swamp rat. And Flake in Arizona, swamp rat. So he's cleaning it out. But we need to get, especially if you're in those states, you need to coalesce around these candidates because these are going to be Tea Party candidates, and that will be huge in the next 2 years in the Trump administration. I haven't done any research on the rest of what Steve Bannon has done, but I will pay close attention to that, and I will bring it to you as I find it out. So we do need to push on the Tea Party. We need to start setting up, and as long as they're going to allow us to be Republicans, we need to start building the ground game of the Republicans, not just for this election, but for the upcoming election when Trump runs against Joe Biden, which I welcome that race, or Bernie. Bernie is a concern. I'm not looking forward to that race. When you start looking at the senatorial and House races coming up, and I can't emphasize this enough, we have to stop thinking Republican and Democrat. If you have an establishment Republican and a Democrat, there's no difference. What difference does it make? I mean, in the state of Virginia, if Gillespie had won, it wouldn't have made any difference. All we would have been able to say was he's a Republican. That doesn't mean anything. Republican or Democrat in that race in Virginia didn't mean a thing. If Gillespie had won, you could have looked back in 4 years over his record, and it could just as easily have been a Democrat. I know this is a fact and it's not happened, but you watch, it will. So we need to stop nominating establishment rhinos. And the way to do this, and I've been saying this for years, the way the establishment Republicans continue to win is in the primaries, they manage to keep out any challenges to them. We need to buck that. We need to nominate qualified conservative Tea Party and run a hard race, a well-financed race against the establishment. Because if we allow establishment Republicans to go ahead and win, they're just going to vote Democrat. McCain is a good example. He's got a Republican after his name, but he has been anti-Trump, anti-Republican, and anti-populist since he's been there, and he continues to do the same thing. So why would we have him there? He needs to go. And in every race, when we come up, if you will look at the Republican that is running the race in your state, ignore the fact that he's Republican. Look at his record. Listen to what he says. And if it sounds conservative and Tea Party, then get behind him and go work for that campaign. Go donate money to the Tea Party or to his campaign specifically. Do not write a check to the Republican National Committee. Do not, do not, do not. If you send money to the Republican, and here's why. In that race in Alabama, okay, now it was between two Republicans down there. See, the way Alabama does it is all the Republicans that want to be in office run. And if nobody gets 50%, then the top two vote getters have a runoff, okay? Judge Roy Moore in the first part had 30-some%, and the guy behind him was close with just under him. So these two had a runoff. When it was all said and done, Judge Roy Moore spent just over $1 million. Okay. The swamp rat that ran against him, the Republican National Committee spent almost $15 million to get that seat. Mitch McConnell endorsed him. Trump held a rally down there for him. So if you donate your money to the Republican National Committee, guess who they're going to spend the money on? They will spend that money on establishment Republicans like McCain, Mitt Romney, Bob Corker. I mean, there's a long, long list that they will spend money to go in where they think the Tea Party has a chance to win. They will go in and spend money there to keep the Tea Party out. Now, why would they do that, you ask? They're both Republican. Why would they do that? Well, that's like asking the same question. Why would the Democrats spend money in a Republican race? I mean, because there's no difference between establishment Republican and Democrats. If a Tea Party candidate gets in there, the establishment Republicans are not going to get their way. Trump and the American people will get their way. And here's a good example. building the wall. We as conservatives want that wall built along the border. And guess who's been against that wall? All the establishment Republicans. Flake, McCain, the lady in Alaska, the lady in Maine, Bob Corker. These guys are all against the wall. And why are they against the wall? The Democrats are against the wall too. And they'll come up with 100 reasons. Cost too much, not feasible to do, too much time, we need cheap labor. I mean, there's 100 excuses they could come up with. The bottom line is the establishment Republicans and the Democrats are both against the wall. We need to get conservatives in there to give Trump the power that he needs to get that wall built. We're almost a year in, and they are just starting the wall. They've got, I think, what was it, 1,500 miles worth of wall to build, and they're just now starting it. We got to get him some help, and we need to go through and do that. So get involved. And here's a good example that proves that this guy in Virginia, Gillespie, was a Republican in name only, but Republican. And everybody was saying it was going to be a close race. So in a close race, people with high stature that reflect your views, supposedly, a lot of times will volunteer to come in and campaign for you. As an example, when Flake hadn't decided whether he was going to run or not, Trump went out and held a rally out there. Laura Ingraham went out there to campaign to get him out. Steve Bannon went out there, and he just dropped out rather than fight. He saw that the Tea Party was after him, and so he just folded. So in this race, when they thought it was neck and neck, Laura Ingraham, Steve Bannon, and Donald Trump, all three offered to go down there and help him, and he refused them all. Now, why would he refuse them all? That sounds like something a Democrat would do, right? Trump, Laura Ingraham, and Steve Bannon would have made a huge difference down there and might even pulled an upset. But he did not want to be associated with that part of the party. He wanted to be with the establishment. If a Tea Party candidate has those three big guns coming in to campaign for you, if I'm that guy, I'm thinking, heck yes. You tell me who, what, when, where, why, and how, and I will do that to make sure these guys come vote or come campaign for me. They will draw money, they will draw crowds, and they will draw votes. That's what we need. So the day after the election, it was very interesting to me. I went through, and normally what I do is I would just pull out an article, but it was so prevalent that I decided I brought the whole first section of the Wall Street Journal, just so you can see it. Okay. And I, understanding what I do, understand the liberal view of the Wall Street Journal amazed me. And what I want to do is I want to go through, because there's lots of articles in here about the election. As an example, listen to the headline on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Republicans take stock after election losses. Democrats advance on East Coast. Two Democratic gubernatorial states stayed Democratic. What's the news? The headlines make it sound like the Republicans are losing. Let's see what the first paragraph says. Republicans began assessing Wednesday how to prevent a potential Democratic wave in next year's midterm elections after a political shellacking Tuesday, fueled by opposition to President Donald Trump. Is that what happened? That's not what I saw what happened. That is amazing. And they got, they got the graphs and the, uh, and the red and the blue and the all kinds of stuff. But so on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, uh, they are already writing, and the Wednesday, how to prevent a potential Democratic wave in next year's midterm elections after a political shellacking Tuesday, fueled by opposition to President Donald Trump. We've already proved it was Donald Trump voters came out in force and voted. So that's so. Okay, so I turn the page, and the next one says Democratic wins could or cloud ACA repeal. Okay, they were governors that won. Has nothing to do with affordable health care. Well, let's see what the first paragraph says. Now, remember the headline. Democratic wins cloud ACA repeal, Affordable Care Act. Democratic wins in Tuesday's elections made it less likely that Republicans, as part of their tax package, will seek to repeal the Affordable Care Act requirement that most people have health coverage, according to congressional aides. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Now they go on to talk about voters in Maine this week decisively backed a referendum to expand Medicaid under the ACA. An exit poll showed health care was a central issue for Virginians who elected Democrat Ralph Northam as their state's governor. Okay. First off, in Maine, they are a Democrat state. Now, yes, they have a Republican senator, but she's a ultra left wing. She's a Republican in name only. She votes no on every Republican issue that comes up. Okay. The expansion of the Medicaid part, that is a state issue. That has nothing to do with repealing Obamacare. Nothing at all. This article is trying to tie state issues to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. The two are mutually exclusive. Obamacare gave the states the option to expand Medicaid, and he wanted them to, and the Democratic states did do that because they were going to get a check for the first couple of years, and then it was going to go down and down until the state finally had to take over the whole mess. So now, so the states are doing what Obamacare gave them the right to do, has absolutely nothing to do with cutting it. But again, this shows you how they are taking not even House and Senate votes, but gubernatorial and local issues and trying to tie them to Trump and the administration. Absolutely unbelievable. So I turned the page. Now, the article on the top of the page says anti-Trump coalition takes shape in Virginia. Again, the exit polling shows exactly the opposite. Trump voters came out in force and voted in the same percentage as it did in the general election nationwide. Okay, but let's see what they say. In their rousing election victories in Virginia on Tuesday, Democrats learned two important things. They found out what an anti-Trump coalition looks like, and they discovered it can be a winning one. That coalition combines upper scale white voters, millennials, minorities, suburban women, and single women. I don't know what to say. That They make absolutely no sense. The exit polling absolutely goes against everything they just wrote. Trump voters showed up en masse to vote. The reason that they went Democrat in that state was because that state is a Democratic state. The northern part of that state is almost exclusively Democratic, and the machine that Terry McAuliffe has built up there did a tremendous job in getting the vote out. That's why they went Democratic. The fact that the Republican was even considered in that race is abnormal, and had he won it, that would have been a miracle. So let's go down on the same page. In the middle of the page, the headline says, "Election Boys' Efforts to Flip State Houses." So they're going to take the win that they were expected to get in 2 state houses, and now they're going to paint a picture that it's going to sweep across the country. Now remember, the Republicans have 35 governor's seats in the country. 35 out of 50 are Republican. And they are now trying to paint the picture that these 2 Democratic states, that stayed Democratic states, are now somehow going to flip state houses across the country. Let's see what the first paragraph says. "The surprising ability of Democrats to pick up Republican seats in the Virginia state houses Tuesday gave new life to a long-held party goal, clinching the power to redraw state and U.S. legislative districts to be more favorable for Democratic candidates." Again, it's already a Democratic state. It means nothing. They're trying to build a wave, a momentum for something that was supposed to happen anyway. So, unbelievable, just unbelievable. Let's see if I can find any more. Yeah, I think that's enough. I think I proved the point. And my point was, when the press is controlled by Democrats, you have to be careful how to interpret and how to read what they are telling you. I'm looking at the op-ed page here, and Karl Rove has written an article that says a mass extinction for Virginia Republicans. Karl Rove, remember, he's the one that got W elected, and he's been a guru for the Republican Party for a long time. He is a swamp rat. Let's see what he says. The blurb says, "Trump deflects blame, but the GOP lost because voters wanted to send him a message." That's not accurate at all. By the way, Karl Rove is anti-Trump. He was pro Mitt Romney. He was pro McCain when they ran. The Republican defeat in New Jersey is unsurprising. The deep blue state went for Hillary by 14 points, and on Tuesday, the next governor, Democrat Phil Murphy, won by 13. The Republican nominee, Lieutenant Governor Kim Giardo, simply couldn't escape the gravitational pull of her unpopular boss, Governor Christie, whose favorability exit polls was 22%. The GOP's loss in purple Virginia is far more problematic with grave ramifications. In the 2018 midterms, Mrs. Clinton carried the state by 5 points. Okay. But Democrat Ralph Nathan won the governorship Tuesday by almost 9. That doesn't prove anything. it proves that more immigrants have moved in, more illegal votes. And by the way, I neglected to mention this. Remember when I said that Terry McAuliffe built a machine up there? One of the things that he did is he gave felons the right to vote. You know, in most states, if you're a felon, you give up your right to vote for life. Terry McAuliffe made it okay for felons to vote, and he's a Democrat. Who do you think those felons are going to vote for? They're going to vote for Democrats. You say, well, that can't be that many. Really? You know how many it is just in the state of Virginia? 200,000. Now, does that make a difference? Absolutely. Would it make 1 or 2 percentage point difference? Absolutely. So Karl Rove is he's, again, remember, we're not talking about Republican and Democrat. He is a Republican, and he is anti-Trump, who is a Republican. He is establishment. Rove is an establishment, and he's anti-Trump because Trump is right now a Tea Party, a conservative. So I turn the page, and here's one, the anti-Trump wave. Let's see what they say. Republicans took a thorough beating in Tuesday's election, and no one should sugarcoat the results because the voting was confined to a few states. Democrats came out in droves to send a message of opposition to Donald Trump, and GOP candidates were swamped in the undertow. While the cliche is not to read too much into an off-year election, this defeat was broad and deep enough to signal that Republicans will struggle to hold Congress next year. Okay, first off, that's wrong. We've covered that in grave detail. But I do want to say this about the upcoming elections. Almost without example, history tells us that whatever party is in power in the midterm elections loses seats. That would be expected. The press from now till then is going to try to paint the picture where if the Democrats pick up 1 or 2 seats, it's going to be a repudiation of Trump. The only way that the Trump administration is going to get anything out of this is if we hold everything and gain 1 or 2. That has rarely been done. I think the last time it was done was under Reagan. And it is possible. We could do that. We could run the table, and it could be devastating to the Democrats. But in order to make that happen, certain things have got to start happening right now. So what they're doing is taking something that they know is going to happen in history, and they're trying to tie it that historically happens. The party that is out of power usually gains seats in the off-year election. That's history. That's a fact. Okay. But what this writer has done is he's taken what he knows to be history and trying to tie it back to create, again, to trying to create this idea that the tide is turned against Trump and the Republicans are in the catbird seat, and it's all over but the fat lady singing. Okay. So there we go. The day after the election, the Wall Street Journal shows its liberality. There was not one article in there that took a different point of view, that took a Tea Party viewpoint. They were all establishment viewpoints. They were all those articles were heralding the Democrats' wins. They were trying to tie certain things to make it look like a wave was coming and the Republicans were done. And I try to bring in articles whenever I do either this show or the Right Wing Reverend, and I try to bring it to people's attention that you have to watch the press. Now, we know about TV and radio and all that, but you have to watch the writing because they have gotten to the point now. See, it used to be that the press was about truth and giving both sides. It's not like that anymore. I just proved that. What has a reputation for being, used to have the reputation for being a conservative newspaper, was recently bought out a few years ago and is now a liberal rag. And every article I just showed you. So be careful what you read, and the places that you read it from. All right. I think we're done with that. I think I proved my point. So now I want to come to the part of the program where we do current events. And as I said at the opening, there was a lot of current events that happened this week. And I want to go through and hit them and just say a little bit about them. As I told you last week, Donald Trump started his Asia trip. It's been a huge, fabulous success. He went to the Philippines, then he went to South Korea, then he went to China, and everybody said he was having a bromance with Xi Jinping. Fabulous. He walked out of there with $250 billion in deals for American companies. And then when he got out of there, he went to Vietnam for a summit and gave a speech from there, and telling, without mentioning China's name, that the days of one-sided taking advantage of us were over, and from this day forward, we will play on a level playing field. So we'll see when Donald Trump gets back, but right now he's winning the public relations angle of it. He's winning the America First angle of it. He's killing it. He's doing an awesome job out there, and he's doing a great job representing this country, and we should be very proud of him. And like I said, I did not vote for him. If he were tripping up or making us look bad like Obama used to do every time he went out overseas, I would call him out on it. But I haven't seen one false move yet. I haven't seen one embarrassing thing. I haven't seen one misspoken word. He's killing it. He's killing it. The Hillary scandal about the uranium has blown up. This is huge. This is huge. This goes all the way to Barack Obama. I mean, there's the Podesta brothers. They're both involved. The Democratic National Committee is involved. Bob Mueller, the ex-head of the FBI, is involved, who's currently special prosecutor against Trump. He's involved in it. Rosenstein in the Justice Department, he's involved in it. This is huge. This is huge. They need to get a special prosecutor. And if Sessions doesn't do it, I believe Trump will fire him and get somebody in there that will. And all they got to do is follow the money, and they will nail every one of these guys. They all deserve to do time. This is the biggest, hugest scandal in American history and politics, in my opinion. Bigger than Tammany Hall, bigger than anything ever seen. So let's stay tuned. Stay tuned. Also this week, Apple released their new phone, the Apple X. I don't know that much about it. I don't use iPhone. I use Androids. But it's my understanding that the technology, they're asking $1,000. There's two of them. The basic is $1,000. The other one is $1,200 and something, I believe. It's my understanding they're awesome. The technology is awesome. They're worth every penny, as I'm told. But that happened this week. The ex-head of the Democratic National Committee, Donna Brazile, has thrown Clinton under the bus. It was in her new book that came out, and I believe the name of it is called Hacks, H-A-C-K-S, Hacks by Donna Brazile. You should go get that book and read it. In that book, she lays out what I told you earlier. When she walked in and took over from Debbie, what's-her-name, Schultz, the Democratic National Committee was broke, had no money, and nobody was doing any fundraising. But Hillary had come in, paid the bills, put them on a tight budget, and was, in exchange for that, she got the right to hire and fire people to determine the the daily operations and the long-term operations of the Democratic National Committee. And Hillary did that when she was still a candidate, when Bernie was still in the race. That's illegal. You can't do that. That's a felony. And then the last thing that happened this week, and this happened just at the end of the week, and I want to talk about this for just a second. The story headline is Judge Roy Moore accused of touching a 15-year-old girl 40 years ago. Now, let's understand a few things. 2 or 3 days later, we now know that the lady that made the accusation is currently an employee or a volunteer, I can't remember which, for the Clinton Foundation. And she's also actively working for the guy that's running against, the Democrat running against Judge Roy Moore. So right there it's discounted. But Judge Roy Moore did come out, and at the time he was single. He didn't get married till he was in his 40s. And at the time he was single, and he said, I have never dated any girl without getting the mother's permission. That pretty much puts that to bed. But the reason that this story is important is because it proves, now follow me on this. Remember I told you that the establishment Republicans, when 2 Republicans were in it, came in and spent $15 million to beat Judge Roy Moore. And Roy Moore won by a big margin. So now it'll be interesting to find out who did this. I do know the story that they're handing out is that a reporter from the New York Times, I believe it was, went down there and found this lady. And had to coax her for weeks to go public. And it's just a sordid story. The bottom line is it's trumped up. There's no story here. It's mudslinging. It's dirty tricks. And remember, the election is in less than a month, so there's nothing that can be done. All they're trying, and the timing of it is done for just that purpose. They don't want to have time for him to go prove anything or to go to court or to have any recourse. But all I could think about when I heard this story was, I remember when that tape came out when Trump was running for election about him grabbing women inappropriately. Remember that? Well, a little bit after that, remember there was, I think, 3 women that came forward. The press said that he grabbed them inappropriately. Remember that? Well, all it took was one of them. One of them was a beauty contestant, and they used her name, and she came out and said, I never said anything like that. In fact, Trump was nothing but a gentleman to me. And he gave me some advice. He never grabbed me. He was never inappropriate. That's all it took to shake that down. But they had enough time to go do that. See, now we only have less than a month of the election. What the Democrats don't understand, what the establishment Republicans didn't understand and still don't understand, is that the people of Alabama are conservative Republicans. And Judge Roy Moore is a legend in Alabama. They are not going to unseat this guy. They are going to spend a lot of money. They are going to do a lot of effort down there to take that seat. And it's not going to happen. The people of Alabama are too smart to see what dirty tricks this is. And these dirty tricks are the exact reason we need Tea Party candidates in Washington, D.C. So you people in Alabama, look at it for what it is. It's dirty tricks. It's the establishment trying to get rid of the Tea Party. Don't let that happen. Go, when the vote comes, I think it's December 15th, if I'm not mistaken. Go vote for Judge Roy Moore and put him in there. Let him help Trump get the agenda through and build the wall, repeal Obamacare, get the tax cut done. Let's get that stuff done. And we need Judge Roy Moore in there to make that happen. If the Democrat, if by some miracle they manage to put a Democrat in there or an establishment Republican, that will be a nail in the coffin for the Trump administration. And that's why they're dumping all that cash and effort down there. So stand strong, you people in Alabama. We're crossing the threshold here. The race is going to get nasty and dirty and rough, but hold tight and put Roy Moore in there when the election comes. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about. I just want to remind you that this program and all the other ones we do is produced and sponsored by the Prayer Box Ministry. Go over there and take a look at us on the net at prayerboxministry.org. That's all one word, prayerboxministry.org. There's lots to do over there. You can watch programs, you can listen to programs, you can have the Bible read to you chapter by chapter, not book by book. You can join a prayer group. You can read our blogs. You can watch a Bible study class. There's lots to do over there. Go over there and take a look. Prayerboxministry.org. That's O-R-G. Well, you all have a great week. I look forward to next week when we do This Week in Politics.